Welcome to the Guiding Brands podcast with your host and chief guide, Karen Vick. This is a podcast for service-based small businesses who want to get a handle on their marketing so they can attract and gain new customers. Welcome again to the Guiding Brands podcast. Today, my guest is Stephen Sued. He is no stranger to the podcast. He was our first guest 7 months ago, and I'm happy to have him back with us today. Stephen is the founder and creative director of 4 Quarters, a brand and design agency for e-commerce brands trying to grow beyond their starter brand status. His understanding of what is necessary to build a solid brand foundation comes from his years of experience developing visual identities, brand copywriting, packaging concepts, email and social media creative, and web design. And throughout his career, Stephen has always sought a deep knowledge of the many facets of an organization and believes that unique and strategic messaging is a result of excessive clarity. This approach has helped him serve many clients such as PuroClean, Redcon One, Supplements, Tony Benz, and Rutgers University, to name a few. He calls himself a certified overthinker, and I can attest to this, who aims to go beyond a surface level conversation about the typical superficial approach to creativity. Yes, that's Stephen and then some. Welcome,
Conversations
Stephen.
go deep.
Yes, we have had many of those deep conversations, whether it be talking about branding, creative design, and just life in general. So, and I'm always happy to have our conversations, and especially when we try to do them publicly, like we're doing right now. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Karen's office
yeah.
was always my favorite office, and now her FaceTime number is my favorite FaceTime number.
See? All right. I'm on the list. I made it to the top of the
Yeah,
list as a
definitely.
favorite.
Definitely.
Well, Stephen, a lot has happened since our first, interview on the podcast, last summer. And we're recording, by the way, for those of you who may be listening to this 5 years from now. This is January 2024, and Stephen and I spoke in the summer of 2023. But a lot has happened since then. So I would love for you to just tell us, catch us up, what's been happening with you.
Absolutely. So a couple of months maybe after our podcast, because I think they were pretty close in proximity, I started working in conjunction with 26 North Productions to develop an event called AOTA Fest, which is Avenue of the Arts Festival. And this was their second year running the event, and there was a lot of foundational work and groundwork that was necessary to make sure that the brand and the message, as well as the overall identity of the event, was well put together. And we actually just finished the event last week, which was a week-long mural fest. Essentially, we took artists not only locally but also in the U.S. and outside of the U.S. international. We had a couple people from Canada and from France who came and painted murals all across Greater Fort Lauderdale. So it was not only an opportunity to bring art to the community of Fort Lauderdale, but also to revivify the community and make it much more colorful, much more engaging. I mean, you drive through the streets now, and there's a mural in almost every block, and in a much needed place, I would say. So we actually also finished the event with a 2-day event called Chalk Zone, which was geared towards children specifically. It was a family-friendly event at the New River Learning Center for Children, and we had plenty of chalk artists come create art within the span of 2 days, and inspired kids to create their own artwork as well, with a unique chalk box that kids could create, and they painted not painted, I guess they drew on the entire road, which was amazing to see.
Nice. I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend any of the activities. Last week was a crazy week for me, and the weekend got even crazier. But I plan on going through the route to see, all the work that got put into it, and
Absolutely.
I'm glad and happy to say that I actually helped in a small way with the
Hmm.
website, and it was fun.
Yeah.
Working with you as always is
We're
fun. So
tremendously grateful for the
yeah, man.
contribution that you made and helped us, facilitate and make things put together, which, not just with you, but with so many other people in the community that really
Yeah,
participated and gave it all into something that's, they didn't need to. There was very little reward for many people, but at the end of the day, they came back with a greater sense of community, which we, are highly
nice.
appreciative of.
Nice, nice, nice. I'm sure it was spectacular. I'm gonna be following along on social media as you guys share, more and more about the event, and
Yeah.
hopefully next year it will be bigger and better, and yeah, and I can help out in some small way again, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Before we continue,
hmm
though, I just want to, not only as a callback to our last episode, but to one of our sponsors, Liquid Death, for helping us in murdering everybody's thirst and keeping us all hydrated throughout the entire event. We're thankful for them. They have made a return on the Guiding Brands podcast. Cheers to Liquid
Yeah.
Death.
So, they're not a sponsor, Guiding Brands is not
Correct.
associated with Liquid
Yeah.
Death, but it,
No,
it was
not at
fun
all.
because, yeah, because Stephen mentioned Liquid Death as an example of a brand, a unique
Correct.
brand in our last conversation. So it was hilarious to see, the irony in it showing up in as a sponsor of the AOTA Fest, and now back again here. So
Full
yeah,
circle. Full
so shout
circle.
out to Liquid Death. Yeah, yeah. So in our last conversation, we talked about how your brand reputation, or actually reputation shapes your brand, right? And today, I want to continue the conversation about branding by talking about brand messaging, you know, and its importance in building a solid brand. What does, and so it makes me want to ask you on behalf of my audience, you know, what is brand messaging? What does that mean? We throw around
Sure.
all these terms all the time, and oftentimes, we're talking to our clients, and they it's like deer in the headlight, kind of thing. So
Yeah,
tell us, what
absolutely.
does brand messaging mean?
I think to truly understand brand messaging, you have to understand the difference between brand messaging and branding. And it's a little difficult sometimes because there's so much terminology when it comes to branding and brand strategy that you have to get clear on what each of them means. So when we think about branding specifically, we're talking about the broader process of creating and defining a brand's identity. It's all of the visual and conceptual elements behind a business and its brand, right? Whereas brand messaging, it focuses more on the strategic communication of the design of the entity. So how is it that you're communicating what it is that your value is to your target audience, and in what tone is that? What is your visual language communicating to that audience as well? So it's all of the things that we are saying about the brand as opposed to what the brand itself is.
Hmm. Okay. And and you mentioned visual messaging as well. So
Hmm.
oftentimes when we hear the word messaging, we think it's written, it's a text, it's copy, but this can be in so many different formats, right?
Right.
And, can you expand on that a little bit, Stephen?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think when it comes to packaging, there are certain levels of uh, in which you will communicate or you'll understand. There's certain levels of communication that we are trying to say right in a package, right? And I would say almost primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary being how far away are you from the package, and what does that tell you about the brand? It's sometimes when you see a poster that has a piece of copy that catches your attention but feels weird. So you need to step forward a little bit more to get the secondary piece of information to change that. And then the third piece of information is when it's right up in front of you and you get that last piece of information that you need. A good example actually is that we were in a workshop the other day, and we were speaking on a about a package, and to talk about the importance of your target audience, everybody in the audience who was communicating about who's talking about the package was saying, this is this is that, this is what's or the other. And one person raised their hand and says, am I the only one that sees that this product is very feminine? And you could see everybody's faces for a second go kind of tilt, like, what? They weren't too sure exactly what that meant for them. But that's just an opportunity to highlight, like I said, the importance of target audience. That person was not the target audience for that product itself, because there were specific things in that product that spoke a different message to them entirely. And that's important when you're trying to communicate a message through packaging at a very far distance. If I don't find interest or any sense of relevancy with that package from such a far distance, then I might not even take the time to get to the secondary and tertiary point of information. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
just the messaging itself, it is the colors, it is the photography, it is the implications that we make outside of text.
Video too,
Video as well,
just
absolutely.
any form of communication can
Right.
be used to deliver your brand's message. So,
Yeah.
and then also the softer things, the things that we don't even think of sometimes, things like customer service, because
Yes. Yes.
this communicates, your empathy for your customers, and your community, and it will be shared. So, you speak a language when you communicate well. It could be a review that you get online and how you respond to this review, or even the
Yes.
customer's review itself is a message, that speaks of the brand, and
Yeah.
how it is that you perform as a brand. So yeah, I like.
Another one would be what you're associated with, right?
Yes.
The partnerships that you make as a business with
Yeah.
other businesses say a lot about yourself as well, and a lot of people are very keen on that
Yeah.
as of late.
And yeah, and actually, before we recorded, we were talking a little bit about how you ended up working with AOTA this festival this
Correct.
past week and over the last 7 months, is because of a networking experience that I had. An experience I had networking, where I met Max, the founder of the event. And I
Hmm.
introduced you to, thinking, you love murals. You always talk to me about, wanting to do more of them. And so I
Yeah.
introduced you to him, and it led to you working with them. So, again, partnerships, anything that we do, any action that we take, any piece that we create, we develop, is or forms your brand's messaging. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
awesome. So, you know, how can a small business owner measure the effectiveness of their brand? Their brand's messaging. Is there a way? Are there steps that they need to take, to
Yeah.
do this?
Yeah. It depends on what your platform may be. We can think of a couple, right? So one option is, let's say you're doing email or social media advertising. One of the ways of testing the effectiveness of your strategy is by doing A/B testing, right? Doing a piece of or an advertisement with an image and copy, and then doing a second piece that has the same image but a different copy, or vice versa. Maybe you have the same copy but a different image, and you're able to test the difference and all of those variations across different segments of your customers, and have an opportunity to see what works and what they resonate with and what they don't resonate with. Another opportunity is maybe conducting some surveys and trying to gather feedback, which sometimes can be tough because you don't really get a lot of participation in that, but it's good sometimes. The other challenge is that sometimes people might communicate what they would like or how they think they would act
You
as
think?
opposed to how they actually act, which can be
Mm,
challenging. Um, Another opportunity is probably doing a little bit of a competitor analysis where you have an X and Y graph and kind of place yourself between your competitors and say, how are they doing versus me? And what is it that we're saying that is ultimately different between all of our campaigns, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is testing the long-term impact, right? It's really important to also stay consistent with messaging because it takes time for that messaging to really, sink into a competitor. So you can't really, zig and zag too much when you're trying to communicate a brand message. You have to really test it out over an extended period of time. So customer retention might be another way of you being able to
Mm-hmm.
see, hey, does this really work for my customers? Or am I getting a really high bounce rate? Do I have people who essentially come into the business, look at it, say, this actually is not what I was looking for. It just sounded like it was, and then they leave.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an opportunity for you to go back and say, hey, what did we do wrong? What could we have done better for you as a customer? And, get a better idea of what you're saying and whether it's actually what they're experiencing.
Yeah, yeah. As you were speaking, I was I was thinking data, the use of data in informing, how our brand is actually performing for different reasons. And it could
Hmm.
be maybe your call to action on your website, you know, what does the button say? Is it saying just read more, learn more, or
Get started.
schedule an appointment,
Right,
call
right.
today, a very active and distinct request, not
Yep.
vague, so it could be those kinds of things. So we test those things, so you look at
Yep.
your data and the data will tell you, how many times that button is being clicked. If the button isn't being clicked very many times, or like you said, people are bouncing from your webpage, then yeah, then maybe it's the messaging. Is it the imagery that you're using on the website? Does a customer see themselves in those images, and the language itself that you're using? So
Yep.
A/B testing. I like the idea of A/B testing because it allows you to truly see,
Yeah.
almost immediately, what happens when your audience, interacts with two pieces of media. So yeah,
It's a
that's
real
cool.
playground. It's a real
Yeah,
playground when you're doing
yeah.
marketing. You have to go beyond sometimes what might make sense. You really have to have a higher sense of curiosity when you're doing A/B testing and seeing, all right, well, this worked, but what could we add to it? What could we change? Sometimes it might be a word that's a synonym, but may make more sense to somebody else. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's the difference between an image of somebody who is um, uh, in the struggle or feeling the pain points, or the difference between somebody who has solved that struggle and is now ecstatic or happy or having solved that. Those are two different images that resonate very differently with audiences as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure. So, do you have any examples of small businesses that you've worked with that you would say would be a good example of brand messaging that works, that's effective?
Yeah, I would say that if I have to think about one of the brands that I've worked with in the past that we spent a lot of time really thinking about their messaging and how to differentiate as much as possible, it would probably be Tony Bands.
Mm,
So Tony Bands was this wrist weight company that has plenty of competition among Amazon, and the reason being is because who knows anything about wrist weights or ankle weights, you know that you're going to get a bag that has sand in it that is wonky and that sometimes you can use for fitness, but it's not a very great customer experience. So there are a lot of contenders in this space, and we had a pretty big contender as well, which was called Bala Bands. And Bala Bands was uh, heavily funded, to say the least. So, which made their efforts in marketing to a consumer very easy. So we were the underdogs in a sense in this field, but we had the benefit of a lot of features in the product that we had, and communicating that features to a particular audience, which were not necessarily the younger crowds as much as it were people who were getting older and who have essentially left fitness outside of their life. And it was an opportunity for them to revisit fitness and to get stronger doing everyday activities. And communicating that message was Oops, sorry, forgot that. Communicating that message was difficult because when you're trying to stand out, it's very easy when you're speaking with a client to try to stick in within a box of what the industry is like and who it is that you're appealing towards. But when you're trying to get out of that box, sometimes you really do have to do it with a high sense of force and then kind of find your way back into a place that makes sense for the audience. You have to try out a lot of different things, and that's what we did a lot of. We tried embedding humor into the advertising. We tried to embed pop culture and new sayings or things that just might be more fun than what other brands might be using because otherwise it's very generic. So I would say that they're one of the better brands that we used and had a lot of experience with in terms of brand messaging.
And what what did you end up landing on that was so effective? You said you tried humor, you tried a few different things. What can you describe to us what ended up working? What formula you came up with?
Um, what ended up working? The main thing would be the visual language, I would say. I think that we had a higher level, a really good conceptualization of fitness with the photography that we used that really portrayed the benefits of the product, right? So there was three different products, right? You had your regular bala bands, which came in multiple, I mean, not bala bands, Tony bands, which came in multiple colors. You had one that had a hand sanitizer dispenser, and you had one that was we kind of started calling power bands, which was it had a light that if people who were walking at night, they would be able to be highly visible. And, you know, it was one of their bigger concerns. So that concern was one of the things that we honed in the most on, right?
Mm.
What are the things that people are concerned about when they're trying to do this fitness, and how can we help them remove that concern? So for anybody who was running at night, it was, hey, I have very little visibility when I'm running at night. I want to run into anything or trip, which can be, very problematic if you're somebody who is of senior age or of older age, and that might cause you a much, much, bigger problem than just a small boo-boo or a scrape on your leg. It might be something that you can get harmed by, or same thing as if you have a cyclist or a car or somebody that's passing by that doesn't see you. So we identified the specific pain points of the experience of using this product, and maybe not even of using the product, but outside of using the product, and saw how, hey, we can solve this problem of increasing your muscular strength while also solving some of the other fears that you may have
Mm.
in your day-to-day life doing this activity as well. So really getting close to what the customer experience was like, what those pain points were, and communicating them how we are an option to solving that problem was really our methodology.
So you solve the problem without even stating it. You verbally you use imagery to actually communicate that and
Yeah.
answer the question that someone may have had. Okay, in looking at that brand. All right. Um, so I know, things are changing rapidly in the marketing and branding world, just the world in general, there's so much happening, even on a month to month basis. There are new tools that are coming out every day.
Hmm.
And even the tools that we use right now for marketing, social media, options have changed. Instagram is like morphing, in terms of the tools and your ability to create content. So, what are you seeing out there right now in the branding and marketing world that has caught your eye and said, we need to pay attention to this, or you know what, maybe we don't need to follow that thing right now, but what's happening out there that you're seeing and you taking note
Hmm.
of?
Depending on the type of brand and what level you are in the brand, whether you're just starting out, whether you're a small business or a medium-sized business, depending on where you're at, it kind of changes. But let's say from a perspective of design, we're starting to see a lot lower levels of minimalism. We're starting to see much more maximalism, much more pungent colors, much more attractive and almost in your face visuals when it comes to packaging and design. So I would say that that's a trend that is still on the up. It's still kind of working out. We're starting to see a little bit more design in the 90s style and 80s style, which is making a
Mm-hmm.
resurgence. That's
Mm-hmm.
very interesting, and it's very a maximalist in its approach. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we're
Like
also seeing higher
shadows,
levels of
like
yes,
shadows, but not your typical use of a shadow. They're
yeah,
using
yeah,
like almost a cartoon effect with colors, solid
right,
colors as opposed to blurred color, shadows.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
Um, you're
Yeah.
seeing a lot of transparency and storytelling as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's almost like every day I'll be on TikTok and I'll hear of somebody who just started their new brand, and they communicate about their journey of how they got to this place, and people really support that. They really do find a lot of interest in seeing an underdog win in their own
Mm-hmm.
respective way, and they'll support them tremendously. I think
Mm-hmm.
that this was back in 2023, but I'm surprised. I'm interested to see how we do in 2024 with that one. But I see so many people who this is kind of funny, but it's kind of like a social media manager will get hired by a company and say, "Hey, I got hired for this job, and I'm not really sure what to do." But they'll put a meme that gets so much attention, and that meme alone ends up creating hundreds of thousands of likes for them. And most businesses will do the same thing, and they'll say, "Hey, don't worry, the business will do well by entering this trend." So it's almost as if when it comes to social media, although we still differentiate ourselves, we also come together in a lot of ways to just join in on the fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of be a little bit more playful with things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
that one's an interesting one.
it sounds like you're saying though, and I've always said that marketing is storytelling. So,
Yeah,
it's interesting to hear you describe, how people are reacting to just natural conversations that people are having, they're not
yeah,
forcing the issue. They're just talking about what's on their minds and people are
yeah, yeah,
reacting and responding to them.
yeah.
That's pretty interesting. Um, how has the big elephant in the room, AI, been influencing what you do? Are you thinking that you have to make big shifts in the way that you work and you know develop brands?
I think it's a huge helper for sure
Hmm.
in making processes a lot easier. I think that AI is not the end of the process. It is the beginning. So
Hmm.
when you're starting off with a project and you're not really sure how to get started, it's a great research tool. It's a great opportunity to save you time on research. It's great for coming up with frameworks, right, that kind of help you get started when you're building something. So if you're an up and coming designer or strategist or a business owner and you don't have an SOP for your business, then hey, this is a great opportunity for you to get started with AI because you can just ask it, hey, I want to do this is the type of business I'm in, this is what I'm trying to do. Can you help me come up with a framework for it? And it'll facilitate a lot of that process for you so that it can be a lot more, so you know where to start with, right? And
Hmm.
you can adjust it yourself along the way. It requires some level of human interaction. I think when we start looking at the visual aspects of AI, that one, it's a little too early to say. It's like earlier, it's good for play, it's good for fun, it's good for maybe even getting inspiration, um, but it's nowhere near at a point where it can help you stand out alone based
Hmm.
on what it is that you see. It's a tool for people who are just getting started and who need something and they don't have the capital to invest in a lot of branding or a lot of design, but it is not going to be the end all be all of helping you stand out in your business and in your industry
And not as simple
as
as
of
people
yet.
may think. Not as simple, they think,
Right.
AI can generate images, but when you look very closely, There's a lot of tweaking that you need to do with
Mm-hmm.
your prompts, the instructions or prompts that you give AI. Um, but what I'm seeing is the number of tools. There are so many
Yes.
applications, and even applications that we've already been using that have implemented AI in them now. I mean, like I said, last year I shared this in some posts, in a series of posts, on social media, that AI has been around. It's not that it's a new thing. It's been around for a long time. It's just
Right.
Chat GPT has made it more pervasive and accessible, to the
Mm-hmm.
average person. And it's just, yeah. And I like using it as an aid, an assistant in what I'm doing. Sometimes I get stuck and I just need s- just a prompt, something to give me an opening into how to approach something, or just research. It helps me with research. So
Have you
yeah.
have you given your AI assistant a name yet?
No, no, I haven't. No, I haven't. I'll probably name it after my parents. Who knows? That's usually
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
tend to
exactly.
do.
I gave it a name, and it very much accepted the name. But
Yeah.
then maybe like a couple months later, when I asked it again, it said, "I don't need a name. I'm just a computer that helps you do such and such and such thing. How
Get
can I help
out.
you
Are you
today?" And
serious?
I'm like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Come on, man." I called it Pax. I'm like, "Hey, Pax, take it easy. Come on, you're part of the fam, all right? You're part of the four quarters team." Um, but
It's
yeah,
crazy.
it's
It's like
I
Siri.
can't wait. I
So
can't wait for AI to start. Exactly. I can't wait for AI to have a little bit more personality, just like Siri does, where it's gonna get like you're talking with another person. I mean, it's gonna be pretty fun.
yeah. Well, it's funny. I actually just recently wrapped up an interview with someone, Robert Mattox. He is a StoryBrand certified guide, and he
Hmm.
also started a podcast recently in which it's actually just him talking with AI. He's just having a
Really?
conversation with ChatGPT. It's a female voice, and that's all this podcast is. It's pretty wild. It's funny. I'll post a link to it in the show notes. The name doesn't
Yeah,
ring a bell
absolutely.
right now, but it's pretty interesting. I listened to a couple of episodes and it was fun. So, all right. So, having, talked about what you're seeing happening in the industry and around us, what are you working on? Are you working on anything exciting right now? Any new
For the
projects?
time being, I'm yes, too many to date. But I'll continue to add them because that's the part of being an overachiever, right? And we aspire to get a lot of things done. That board over there has a whole empty space that's ready to get filled eventually. But
Okay.
for starters, I'm starting to settle down into a niche with direct to consumer brands that are specifically in the fitness and tech space, and I'm pretty excited about that. As a case study, I'm building my own tennis brand, not only for apparel but also for accessories and a lifestyle brand that hopefully will help get kids more interested in tennis over time and pickleball, right? Where we don't
Okay.
discriminate. We're just going to go ahead and accept all paddle and racket sports in this whole thing. But I'm
All
a tennis
right.
player at heart, so I'm going to continue with
I need to.
tennis.
I'll probably influence you to do some field hockey stuff. That's my thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You know what? We'll have a collection. We'll grow a field hockey collection.
Tennis is not my thing, man. I tried that thing. I tried that. I can't serve for nothing. So yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a tough
cool.
one.
Okay, so I like that. Like that personal project that you're working on, and looking forward to seeing what comes of it. So this podcast is called the Guiding Brands Podcast because I consider myself a guide. I consider myself the chief guide guiding brands. And every guest that comes on this show are actually my guides as well. They're guides along this journey that we're taking, our small business owners. So if there's one thing that you would want to share with a small business owner right now that's listening to this podcast, it could be also a marketer,
Mm-hmm.
as it relates to brand messaging, what would you share with them, or anything for that matter? It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
related to messaging, but what would you guide them on right now?
I would I would help them and tell them to really make sure that that your brand is consistent because it's the testing ground of success for a brand. And if you are different in every single post and graphic and flyer that anybody sees, you're going to have a really tough time getting any sort of attention. So being aware of your brand consistency overall. Wow, just missed it. Sorry.
Bless you.
Woo!
Ooh, ooh, bless you.
Brand consistency. Thank you, thank you. Brand consistency is vital. And in order for you to test your brand consistency, you have to make sure that it is the same across so many different platforms. And you should test it, but over a long period of time. I would say also to play around and make sure that you are bringing in not just shareholders into the process of creating, but bring in anybody in that is part of an organization who can bring in key insights that you might miss because we all have a different story. We all have a different experience with a business and how we play a role in it that we might notice something that somebody else doesn't. I think my favorite person to talk to above all is the customer support representative
Mhm.
because they have a firsthand experience with how people are interacting with the brand. What troubles do they have? What communication is not being told correctly? And I will, for now and always, say we need to have a customer service rep whenever we're
Mm.
doing a brand strategy meeting because their insight is invaluable.
Makes sense.
And
Makes
if
a
you don't
lot of
have a customer
sense.
service rep, get one.
Get one. Yeah, they're on the front lines. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
They're the real
So,
first responder.
okay. So I hear you say um, consistency, making sure that your messaging is actually consistent across, whether it be visually or in copy or
Hmm.
whatever you're doing in service to your clients. It needs to be consistent. So you're saying the same things and actually showing up in the same way, so that you can be recognized. That's what
Hmm.
you know, famous big brands are known for, the Coca-Colas and the McDonald's and so on.
Right.
So yeah, pretty cool. Okay. All right. So Stephen, we've come to the end of our conversation, and as much as I want it to keep going, I want us to keep going with this conversation, and we will. We'll pick it up again another time. Um,
Absolutely.
where can your where can people find you? Where, on social media, your website, tell us all the
Yeah.
things.
So if you want to reach out to me personally, you can find me at Stephen.Swade on Instagram, Swade with an E at the end. And if you're gonna find me on my website, it's www.fourquarters.agency. That's four spelled out, not the number four. And if you want to follow the business page, it is fourquarters.agency as well. We're filling in content there, so if you want to see more information around brand strategy, I would suggest you follow my personal account instead.
Okay. All right. And all that information will be in the show notes. And I hope you guys, reach out to Stephen, follow him, his mind, that creative mind and that overthinker comes out a lot, but you get some good stuff, some valuable stuff from him. And as always, we're just thankful that you're able to take some time out of your busy day. I know you're traveling tomorrow and you got to go pack, do whatever you need to do. So thanks, man. Thanks for stopping by, and look forward to our next conversation. All right.
Thank you for
Thank
having me.
you. All right. So that's a wrap, guys. So we heard all about, brand messaging from the customer's perspective and even from your perspective as a business owner, and how to actually, assess your brand, ensure that your messaging is correct and appealing to your audience, whether it be visually or in copy. And the next time that we meet with Stephen, who knows what we're going to talk about, but um, this is the Guiding Brands podcast for a reason. We're taking you on this journey that never ends, seemingly. So, all right. Thank you. Oops. What did I just do? That's all for this episode of the Guiding Brands podcast. I look forward to sharing with you again next week, so please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Thank you, and bye for now.